The movie opens somewhere on Earth, where a little girl is playing by herself. The environment seems peaceful for a while, but shortly, the girl notices the ground shaking, something like an earthquake. She gets scared and calls out for her mom, but we can only hear the sounds of a police siren. Her mom calls her Carol, and the scene shifts to introduce us to a bunch of characters. It looks like it's an audition, an interview for a reality show that documents survival on a stranded island. There are 8 of them who will be competing to win the show, and each participant brags about why and how they will ultimately win. Soon on the island of Solum, the host greets the participants and announces how the game will proceed. She reveals the survival rules. They must take care of themselves, conserve warmth, avoid injuries, and provide food for themselves. The last person to leave this patch of land will be the winner. Anyone who decides to withdraw from the competition just needs to use the button on their radio or find an evacuation point. After that, she tells them they will soon find themselves alone and separated on the island, and she wishes them luck. The first scene features a woman named Sarah trying to start a fire using makeshift tools. She films herself complaining about the conditions since everything around is wet, and modern people don't know how to use old methods. She says lighting a fire is much easier when you watch it on TV and much harder when you do it in real life. But she has no choice and continues her task to make a fire. The scene then takes us to the second participant in the reality survival show. It is John speaking into his camera, stating that he needs to find shelter on the island. He wanders around for a little bit and finds a wonderful place where sheer cliffs protect against the wind. It's almost a 5-star hotel where he will set up camp behind a giant rock formation. John shortly collects branches of trees he found there and arranges his new dwelling to enjoy the beauty of the surrounding nature. Meanwhile, the camera takes us to an unidentified object circling high above the earth. It looks compact-shaped and has an alien nature on its inside. It's all covered in black, with a stage in the middle, and it seems to be guarded by 2 human-looking creatures. Back on Solum Island, we meet Liam, a skilled archer, but not one of the participants in the game. More about him will be explained later, but for now, we meet Carol. Yes, the exact little Carol we saw in the beginning. Now grown up, she has entered this reality TV survival game. The others also explore the island, hoping to settle in comfortably. Everything around them is only causing excitement so far. Carol films herself telling her viewers that the island feels just like home. It now seems to her that she has been preparing her whole life to be here on this island. Then the scene transitions to Earth, now devastatingly barren land. We see footage of Earth, which is empty and devastated, and we also glimpse the same humanoid alien that we saw on the compact ship, now walking across Earth as if it's just getting to know it. Back on Solum Island, another participant named Christoph prepares to build his first project on the show. It seems like he will be building a raft, and he seems ready. Another participant named Scott is also shown screaming in awe at the astonishing view from the mountain. He of all of them seems most excited to be here. We then are shown Paul. Paul, however, does not film anything that he does, nor appreciates the view. Instead, he climbs up the mountain and examines the surroundings. He appears to be much more serious than the others, fully aware of the complexity of the challenges ahead. The first thing he does is throw his radio button into the sea, cutting off his chance of returning to civilization. Meanwhile, Carol continues her exploration and suddenly finds a blooming hydrangea. She marvels at the flowers and even strokes one of them, but when she moves away from the plant, the flower flickers as if it is a hologram. Elsewhere, Archer Liam is busy preparing his bow and setting off for a hunt. We don't know what he is hunting, but it doesn't seem like an animal back on Earth. The alien continues to survey the ruined, desolate planet. Back on Solum Island at nightfall, we see Emma recording her first video since she got on the island. She says she hasn't eaten all day while building a shelter from a piece of plastic she brought with her. She will think about food tomorrow. Right now, she would love to get some sleep. However, the sounds on the island are not very conducive to that. Liam as well made a fire for the night and spent his night in the forest sharpening his arch. The next day, we see Scott, who started his morning with meditation beside the ocean. He practices gratefulness and mindfulness and tells the viewers to integrate calmness into their daily lives. He is happy to be alone with nature, and we can see the excitement and luckiness to be here in his eyes. Scott then heads in for a swim, completely naked and free of any earthly things. Elsewhere, we see Paul destroying his camera and leaving it on the shore. However, just as he walks away, the camera's fragments begin to flicker and vanish without a trace, depicting another simulation point of view other than the flowers. Soon we are taken back to Sarah, the first participant we saw in the beginning. She is now awakened from her sleep and starts to film herself continuing from where she left off the other night. She made a makeshift shelter for her sleep and told her viewers she also managed to make a fire, even though it was hard at first. She also tells us her persistence has paid off, and she has found snails. She is glad she brought a pot with her, because today she will have snail soup. However, just when she was explaining things to the camera, she made a wrong step on an unbalanced rock and slipped, hitting her head. Shortly, she records another video. She has broken her leg on the second day on the island and will have to drop out of the game. The woman says goodbye to her viewers and presses the button on her radio to call for help and be extracted. However, she just starts to flicker and then finally vanishes as if her soul has just left her body. Meanwhile, Scott is preparing a fishing net when Liam, with his bow, appears on the shore. At first, Scott greets Liam rather warmly, although he thought participants weren't supposed to see each other. He didn't suspect anything deadly. However, Liam raises his bow to try and shoot Scott dead. After all, it was the participants that he was looking forward to hunting. Realizing he's about to be shot at, Scott runs away quickly, desperate to save his life. The archer chases him into the forest, periodically shooting arrows at his back, which he successfully dodges. Soon, Scott manages to hide from the deranged Liam and escape his death by hiding behind a low-level cliff. Elsewhere, we see Kristoff filming himself, telling his viewers that he believes the main source of food on this island must come from the water. So, he decided to build a raft for fishing. It turns out that in his life in the outer world, he used to work as a bailiff, and he is sure it will aid him in winning this survival game. In the meantime, the camera focuses on Carol in the morning, where she is now telling her viewers she finally found a solution for finding food. She goes behind a rock and introduces Paul to the audience. He told her he had some problems with his camera equipment and is now staying with her to make fire for food. He offered to team up, and she was happy. However, just then, Paul hears squeaky noises in the back and tells Carol to hide behind a wall. He picks up a stick and hits Scott, who has emerged from behind a rock, but fortunately not too hard. Scott is outraged and talks about an attack by a lunatic with a bow. Paul noticeably tenses up and starts asking Scott more questions. He then steps forward and admits he was expecting this and tells Carol to get ready, because they'll be leaving now. Carol and Scott don't understand how Paul could have anticipated the behavior and attitude of an unknown participant, but Paul doesn't answer them and just leaves them there. Elsewhere, we see Emma trying to find food and hopeful she will succeed in the forest. She says she can eat anything as long as it doesn't kill her, but before she can walk long, she comes across the lifeless body of Sarah laying on the ground. She stands there, shocked by what she is seeing, and is now frozen. She again hears a squeaky noise behind her and halts her grief for a second to run back to her shelter and hide, making no sound. At night, Carol and Scott stay together at the bonfire they made. The night is cozy, and the two participants share their backstories. Carol also tries to understand why Liam chased Scott, as killing him on a TV show seems at least foolish from her perspective. She also admits she has always been strange and liked talking to objects. Her first friend was a bindweed. Naturally, other children didn't understand and didn't like her, thinking she was weird. Thus, she has always been ashamed of her sensitivity until she was told that it was a gift. Scott agrees that it's a gift and tells her that everybody has a gift once they are born. Being the positive and grateful man he is, Scott doesn't let her down and supports her all the way. The next morning, Carol wakes up from a nightmare where she finds herself in some strange, huge hall. It was white, and she was the only person there. When she wakes up, she is still in the forest with the same surroundings as her. Then Scott arrives with some food, but she still looks confused and tells him it was the strangest dream she had. However, before she can tell him more, a scream is heard, and Paul appears, telling them to run. At that moment, an arrow embedded itself in a tree. The trio runs into the forest while Liam chases them, occasionally shooting arrows. However, the group manages to escape, They reach the shore where they meet Kristoff. Hearing about the attack, he is ready to call for rescue by pushing the button, but Paul says that would be equivalent to admitting defeat. He suggests climbing higher to the top to get a better view of the surroundings. The people head to the mountains. Soon after a great hike, they find Emma rummaging through the backpack of the deceased Sarah. When she sees them, she thinks of running away, but they convince her they came for peace and just want to help. Emma then breaks down in terror, having seen what she saw. The group empathizes with her, and Carol embraces her to calm her down. She then cries and admits she is very scared because she felt someone was watching her in the forest. Kristoff once again suggests using the radio button to call for help, but at that moment, Scott finds Sarah's videotape and plays her last message. They are shocked by what they see. The video reveals what happened to Sarah after she pressed the radio button. She simply died after glitching for a second. Now all of them, terrified, tell Kristoff to put the radio down. Emma is still breaking down, and the rest don't know what to think. Elsewhere, we see John unbothered, enjoying his day trying to find fresh spring water. But in the meantime, Liam is sneaking upon him with his arrow and bow intact. The next morning, we see Carol waking up before anyone else and looking around the beautiful forest. It looks greener and more beautiful than ever, and it attracts her as if calling her name. She finds astonishingly beautiful plants. Sitting in front of them, she tells them about an incredible place somewhere out there. Carol speaks to things as she confessed, and she is once again connecting with nature. However, just then, Liam appears from behind, scaring her. She snaps, but he tells her he needs the truth. Carol doesn't know what he's talking about, how the beauty is gone, and how humans destroy their homes. He is a judge and doesn't want to kill her or anyone else, but he must signal those who kill. They didn't help people, so he had to act. Still not having a clue about his context, she just shuts up. Liam then makes her lead the way to her friends. He has an arrow behind her, so she can't refuse, but once they get there, it's only Emma and Scott. Liam asks where Paul is, but just then, Paul grabs him from behind and puts a sharp wood against his neck. The two then lead in a fight where the others try to help attack Liam. But while they fight, Liam pushes Carol hard in the face, and she falls, hitting her head on a rock. She passes out, and when she wakes up, she finds herself somewhere remote in an unfamiliar room and sees a strange transparent sphere in her hand. On the shore, the bald humanoid alien stands with glowing blue eyes and looks at the ocean with delight, as if it's glitching and disappears completely. Meanwhile, Carol wanders through a white space resembling an office. Suddenly, a screen turns on in front of her, and a man on camera talks about how if someone is watching the video, it means they are the last one on the station, and he is either dead or hiding in a bunker. While there are supplies of oxygen and food, he strongly asks others not to go outside and hopes that everything will be forgotten. At this point, Carol comes to her senses and finds herself being carried on a stretcher by the boys. They are still on Solemn Island, and this was one of her visions. She admits that something is happening to her, and that she is somewhere else, but Paul reassures her she is fine. Then they see the participant John killed by a wooden stick. He was killed horrifically, and the group understands how things are escalating. Soon they reach the seashore, and the men agree to take care of the body. Now they need to secure themselves. Meanwhile, Liam regains consciousness in some pit and climbs out. Back in the group, Carol confronts Paul and tries to get answers from him. She says she doesn't buy that they were being chased by an archer, and now they are safe. She asks why she's having these visions of the facility or lab in her dreams. Paul can't explain it to her yet, but it's clear he knows more than she does. She asks him why he, in the first place, said he knew the archer would appear on the island. Paul then screams, "It's a selection process." He then reveals the most shocking truth so far. This is a selection process because people on Earth have destroyed everything. People poisoned the environment, started a nuclear war, and used up all natural resources. It got to a point of no return, and humans screwed up for real. He reveals that the game on the island is humanity's chance for survival, their chance of survival. He was a radio astronomer while Earth was still functioning. One day, they received a message from aliens promising to come soon to save the best of them. She then wakes up in the previous facility where she envisioned, and this time the bald humanoid alien with blue eyes is with her. He calls her Solem, but she refuses to answer to the name. He told her Solem means exclusive only, and that's what she is. He says he is a collector made into her image to ease the process of understanding. He then asks for the sphere in her hand. Carol, a bit hesitant, hands over the object, and the alien seems to bathe in its energy. Suddenly, the sound of the siren comes up, and Carol finds herself in some huge white space. All this is happening in her mind, and the shifts are confusing to her. The bald humanoid alien then speaks to her, and she demands an answer. He tells her she is now inside him, and that everything around is made for the meeting, which he calls the encounter. It is a program created for first contact. For years, humans sent messages to the stars, asking for help and reaching out, but when aliens finally responded, there weren't any answers coming from the humans. Carol asks why the humans did not respond. The bald humanoid shows her a small sphere floating in the air. Carol reaches for the sphere and suddenly sees burning forests, melting glaciers, catastrophes and calamities, and dying people whose rulers are convinced of their safety until the end. Then Carol comes to her senses by the campfire next to the other participants. Scott then approaches her and tells her Paul has told them what he told her, and they think it's nonsense. Emma is also not buying the Earth is destroyed dilemma, and the two calm Carol. Carol is still terrified of what she just discovered, but she doesn't say anything to the group. Paul announces that they are supposedly in an alien laboratory, but they don't believe this and begin to argue with him. Paul explains that aliens sent spheres all over the world to conduct selection and choose the most worthy. He and his friend Liam were working alongside the scientists, and they learned to deceive the spheres, but they could always deceive them. Meanwhile, Carol had a special sensing ability, so she came up with a new way of communicating with the humanoid aliens. In the morning, Kristoff spots Liam coming for them, and he screams for the others to wake themselves up. The group shortly starts to run for their lives, fleeing from Liam. They escape for a while, losing him in the forest, but suddenly Paul and Carol stay behind, hiding in the leaves. Paul has a plan and emphasizes no matter what, the rules of the game don't change. The last one to survive the forest is going to be saved by the aliens, so she must head to an extraction point for her to win. He asks her to hide on the highest peak and wait to be extracted. Then surprisingly, he reveals he is doing this because he was her husband while they lived on Earth. She accepts his wish regardless of the shocking truth he revealed. She then runs towards the group and tells the others to hurry to the mountain, but a wooden stick flies from the forest and kills Kristoff right there in front of them. It is Liam who appears to be the killer, and being the great archer he is, he attempts to shoot the others as well. However, he is stopped by Paul, who shoots and makes him taste his own medicine. Now looking defeated, Liam reveals and pleads with Paul to understand that the aliens never intended to save them. He tells him that his brother was a good person and worthy to be saved, but he trusted the judgment of the aliens and volunteered to take the survival game. His brother couldn't survive, and so he died, and Liam blames the aliens for it. If they wanted to save humanity, they could do it right here and now, but instead, they are testing and killing them. Paul doesn't agree with his claims and says humanity is a reckless species that destroyed everything, leaving only chaos behind. That's who we are. So Liam charges at Paul to attack, and the two stand off. After several punches and twists, Liam, who intends to win the game and bring a bomb to the alien ship, emerges victorious, leaving Paul dead. Watching this, Carol screams in horror, but Scott reminds her that her husband sacrificed himself for them to get to the extraction point. They continue running, however, Emma twists her ankle while running. She asks them to leave her there and run for the mountain, but they can't just leave her there. Thus, Scott suggests setting a trap for Liam. Shortly, Liam arrives to see the woman helpless on the ground. She tells him they left her behind due to her ankle. Liam is skeptical about it, but when he tries to approach Emma, Scott and Carol attack him from behind. However, he manages to grab and kill Emma, despite the wound Scott gave him. Soon, Scott orders and sends Carol to the peak where the game's exit is, and where she will be extracted as the winner of the game, but he will be staying here behind to guard Liam not following her. He also watches as Emma's body flickers and her soul vanishes, and realizes that everything Paul has said is true. While he sits there in despair, Liam asks to be killed because he cannot surrender to any of it. Scott raises his spear to shoot him dead, and the scene finally shows us the ultimatum. Carol reaches the summit, and Scott presses the radio button to end his life. Immediately, a sphere appears before Carol. In its eyes, all the deceased participants begin to flicker strangely. Carol reaches out and sees all the participants lying deep in the forest, but the simulation begins to close, and eventually, Solemn Island disappears. Soon, Carol finds herself on the floor of the laboratory with the sphere in her hand. In front of her are the bodies of the participants whom she says goodbye to. Then, following the humanoid alien, she steps outside. On her head is a protective helmet, and ahead is an alien ship that Carol boards and sees 5 unknown people who have also become winners in the survival game. They have passed the alien selection together with her. The film comes to a close as they look at the destroyed Earth, looking forward to welcoming their new home planet of the aliens. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.